Welcome back to Politics and Profits, everybody, broadcasting from the Liberatory CPA studios. I'm Rick Amato. We now have a Politics and Profits television exclusive. A big story being ignored by the media. A forensics expert has determined that the DNC computers were hacked locally by someone with physical access to the DNC network and not by someone far away like the Russians. This story was broken online by the hot new investigative website called Disobedient Media. The forensics expert handed over the information to the reporter Elizabeth Voss. Joining me this time out of Iowa City, Iowa, is the managing editor of disobedientmedia.com, Ethan Lyle. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick.
Ethan, no one's reporting on this story. You guys are. We appreciate you bringing it to Politics and Profits. Tell us how you got this information and what should we what we know.
Right. So Elizabeth Voss, Disobedient Media's associate editor, a man named Adam Carter reached out to her, and he had an analysis from somebody online named the Forensicator.
Let me ask you, who is Adam Carter? Adam Carter got this and gave it to you guys. Who is he?
He's an independent journalist.
Okay, continue.
Yes. Yes. And so an anonymous blog, a forensics analyst, looked at the data, and he had noticed because of the transfer speeds and the timing of those transfer speeds, that they were East Coast, and they had to have been accessed in the East Coast. They were initially copied in the East Coast. He guaranteed that. And that data, the likelihood of it being accessed and copied initially from anywhere but the East Coast is impossible.
So what that means in layman's terms, again, is that the DNC computer network, which the media tells us and the DNC tells us was hacked by the Russians, what you're telling us, the forensics experts' conclusions are that it was physically accessed by someone within close proximity of the DNC.
Correct. Given the metadata and the behavior of the transfer and the stop times in between them, the only likely scenario that it was accessed from inside of the local area network of the DNC or with a USB drive into a computer, which you'd have to be inside of the building.
Now, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist here, because there's a lot more work to be done here, but those computers were hacked 5 days prior to Seth Rich's untimely demise, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it's important to state that this does not indicate that Seth Rich was the person that accessed the files, because they won't turn over their logs to the FBI. There's no way to tell which credentials were used to get into the system. We only know that it happened it could have been anybody in there.
Since you've broken this story online, has anyone from law enforcement reached out to you?
No, we have not.
Anyone from CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, the New York Times?
Absolutely not. Nope.
Does that surprise you?
Not in the slightest. No, it does not.
All right, so now we know that a forensics expert has determined that this computer was hacked not from afar, but locally, physically, East Coast time. You're an investigative journalist outfit, disobedientmedia.com. Great organization. You just started in January of this year. What do you feel is going on here, Ethan?
Well, I think that the idea that we're just supposed to accept the fact that it was a Russian hacker when we have data like this that proves otherwise. I mean, on top of all of that, the size of the file and analysis of the metadata says that it had to have been transferred at 22.6 megabytes per second, which is too fast for even an internet connection. You'd have to be inside of a local area network. So for them to believe that facts like that can just be, washed over, that's it's very disingenuous.
I would think that if nothing else, that we talked about CNN and New York Times, I would think the Trump White House would be interested in this information.
Yeah, the DNC is they've been so secret. They won't turn over any of their files, and they're very adamant about that. And we're now seeing the DOJ is being slowly turned over to the Trump administration, and I guess it's going to be some time before things like this are going to be considered.
What might what might we see from disobedient media in terms of follow-up stories on this? I would imagine your minds are spinning with this new revelation.
Right. So a lot of people are interested in the Seth Rich angle, and of course we are too. So the only way that we could continue on with this story, it's more of a dead end if we don't have the credentials for who logged in. So moving on with the story, other than the simple facts that we laid out, it's not going to happen.
What can you tell us about this forensics expert who came to this conclusion? Anything you can tell us about his background?
Right. So he's anonymous, but there's been dozens and dozens of people, including our own developer, that have looked at the information and the data that he's presented and said it's correct. It's a thorough analysis. He dotted his I's and he crossed his T's.
The one, if I'm not mistaken, the one news outlet that did pick up your story is Russia Today, RT.
Yes. Yep.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
So, all right, Ethan Lyle, managing editor of disobedientmedia.com. You're not getting a lot of cooperation out of the DOJ, out of the DNC. You're not getting any follow-up from New York Times, CNN, what have you. But it's a big story. We'll tell our viewers to keep an eye on this story, that a forensics expert has handed over the information to disobedientmedia.com, which shows that the DNC computer network was hacked by someone with close proximity within the East Coast time zone, not from afar. Less than 30 seconds. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the mainstream media is holding on to this Russian narrative so tight, they're not willing to let go. Even simple facts won't make them reconsider.
It's a good point. In fact, they're doubling down. Instead of ignoring and going away, they're trying to save their reputation. Back after this.
Politics and Profits with Rick Amato is brought to you by Liberatory Accounting, the IRS problem solvers. To find out how Liberatory Accounting can help you, call 877-6-SOLVER. That's 877-6-SOLVER.